In this video, I'm going to go over what's going on in the current auto market because it seems like we're living in the most unaffordable car market in modern history. At least that's what some analysts are saying right now, and it's hard to argue that given some of the numbers we're seeing at the moment. According to Edmunds, in the second quarter of this year, a record high 17.1% of people who are financing a vehicle paid more than $1,000 a month. $1,000 per month. To give you some perspective on how drastic of an increase that is, in the second quarter of 2019, before the pandemic, the percentage of people with that high of a payment was 4.3%. Just like the housing market, car buyers are dealing with high prices and high interest rates. Normally, high rates should bring down the price of vehicles, but right now, Cox Automotive is showing the average price for a new vehicle is over $48,000. In 2019, they were closer to $39,000. Just to add to that point, new vehicles under $30,000 only make up about 8% of the market. Before the pandemic, they made up 38% of the market. And vehicles under $20,000, they only make up about 0.3% of the current auto market. In fact, Wells Fargo analysts had a report that stated that pricing has been growing at a 6.6% compound annual growth rate since 2019, outpacing the historical compound annual growth rate of less than 2%. When the pandemic started, car prices increased due to supply chain issues that slowed down the production of new cars. And because of the new demand and restricted supply of new cars, prices on new cars kept climbing. But even before the pandemic, people started to prefer more luxurious cars. They wanted more features and bigger vehicles. We started to see sedans replaced with more SUVs, and trucks kept getting bigger and bigger. Dealers started keeping more of these feature-rich vehicles in stock, which only magnified the price when the shortage of cars started. The shortage caused more and more demand even though car makers were still having issues with getting semiconductors. The Russian-Ukraine war made matters even worse, and before we knew it, car prices were at an all-time high and rates were up because of inflation. You would think these higher car prices and higher rates would drop the number of new cars being sold, and it has, but not by as much as it should have, to be honest. People in the US are purchasing about 15 million new cars a year. Before the pandemic, that number was about 17 million, close to a 12% decrease. It definitely shows that more and more people are being priced out of the market, but for car makers, it's a non-issue. They're more than making up for the lost volume by squeezing out bigger margins on their high-end trims. In fact, in the third quarter of 2022, domestic car manufacturers saw profits of $32 billion, which was the highest it's been since 2016. I'm going to read you some quotes from industry leaders regarding lower production levels. Mary Barra, the CEO of GM, stated, "Overall, we're going to maintain discipline. I do think there's an opportunity to drive strong margins." Ford CFO John Lawler said, "As we're working through this lower inventory and these opportunities we're seeing today, we're working on how we can make them a normal part of our business world as we go forward." And Ford's CEO Jim Farley added, "I want to make it extremely clear to everyone, we are going to run our business with a lower supply than we've had in the recent past because it's good for our company." To me, that sounds like business is good despite the drop in sales. So good, in fact, that car dealerships also saw record profits in 2022. To add to the already increased prices, dealerships added ridiculous markups on vehicles. A study reported by the Wall Street Journal showed that new vehicle profit margins for dealerships was at 11.5% in 2022. In 2019, that percentage was 4.9%. That's more than double, and the crazy part is that car manufacturers actually hate it. Although it does make me wonder if dealers went to a direct-to-consumer model like Tesla, if it would actually make cars cheaper, or if they'd absorb those dealer profits for themselves. All I know is that right now, cars, which is the second biggest expense for most people after housing, is becoming more and more out of reach for everyday Americans. Stats show the average vehicle age is about 13 years. People are choosing, and to be honest, some people have no choice than to repair their current vehicles instead of jumping into the current car market. The downside there is that vehicle repairs are also up. According to an article from carscoop.com, vehicle repairs have skyrocketed 20% in the last 12 months. That's right, those greedy dealers are not only forcing you to pay huge markups, they're also making more money than before off people who keep their older cars. According to the National Automobile Dealers Association, parts and service account for more than 44% of dealership profits. More costly repairs equates to higher insurance costs for everyone, which is part of the reason insurance rates have gone up 17% in the first half of 2023.
Skyrocketing insurance rates. According to Bankrate.com, U.S. drivers are now paying more than $2,000 more a year for premiums.
That reminds me, I need to shop around because mine has gone up more than 25% and my driving history is clean as a whistle. I'm sure many of you are in the same boat or worse. If you are, brace yourself because it's projected to increase another 4% before the year is over. Higher repair fees, more expensive vehicles, and reinsurance is causing these rates to keep shooting upward. This is making people resort to dropping coverages to help take on the increased cost. In fact, the percentage of shoppers considering purchasing full coverage insurance dropped by 50% this year. Of course, that's not even an option if you're financing or leasing your vehicle. So, with car prices, rates, and insurance all at unaffordable prices, one has to ask, who's buying these cars? Well, when the average car payment in America is over $700 for a new car, over $500 for a used car, and the median income for a full-time worker is $57,000, the answer is people who can't afford them, or people who can barely afford them. And this is why more and more lenders are pulling out of indirect lending. They're betting that people aren't going to be able to make these payments, which is pretty worrisome. There is one section of the car market that is competing on price, and that's the electric vehicle market, a market being pushed by the White House. But are EVs affordable for most people? I actually went in depth on this in a video I posted that you can watch here.